In this lesson, we'll learn about a new tool in Illustrator CS5 that will make the process of creating complex shapes a snap. Alright, so if you've used Illustrator much, you probably are familiar with the Pathfinder panel, which is located under your Window drop-down menu and Pathfinder. And in the Pathfinder, you've got several different options as far as shape modes and pathfinders for creating more advanced shapes. Now, if you've used this Pathfinder much, probably the primary two buttons you've used in here are the Unite button and the minus front button. Now, I know that those are the two that I use most often, so let me just go ahead and close that Pathfinder panel because Illustrator has a brand new tool that is going to make using those two functions really simple for you. It's called the Shape Builder tool. Now the Shape Builder tool exists right over here in your toolbox, and it's the keyboard shortcut Shift M. And I tell you what, let's go ahead and move down onto our scratch area here, and I've got sort of a small illustration here going on, and we're going to be working with that for this lesson. But before we jump into this here, let's go ahead and double click on our Shape Builder tool, and we're going to bring up the Shape Builder tool options, and we're going to go over some of these and talk about what they do. Now the first option you see here is called gap detection. Now using the Shape Builder tool, Illustrator actually has the ability to detect a gap between two shapes. So let's say you have two shapes that you're wanting to combine, but there's a little gap between those two shapes. If it's a small enough gap, Illustrator can actually detect that gap using gap detection and fill that gap in with a shape. So you can turn that on here and you can tell it to detect small gaps, medium gaps, or large gaps, or you can even custom specify how large of a gap Illustrator should detect. So I'm not going to go ahead and use that right now. Let's just go ahead and uncheck that here, and let's move down into these other options right here. Now this first one we do have checked is consider open filled path as closed. So let's say we have a shape that is an open path that we thought was a closed path. Using this option right here, Illustrator is going to treat that shape like a closed path. So that really makes it simple for shapes that maybe they're open paths but you're not aware that they're open paths. Now moving on to this next option, let's talk about that for just a moment here. Let me go ahead and cancel these options so I can show you the Shape Builder tool. Now let's go ahead and select some shapes here. We'll just select these shapes right here. And you can see here that the Shape Builder tool by default has a little plus by it. This means it's in merge mode. So let's go ahead and go back to our options here. This next option says in merge mode, clicking the stroke splits the path. That's going to allow us to split a path if we click on the path itself instead of the shape. So I'm going to leave that one unchecked. And we have some colorization options down here next. We can pick our color from color swatches or from artwork. We have a really interesting feature here to do the cursor swatch preview. Now this is very similar to the live paint tool. If you've used the cursor swatch preview with that, we'll go ahead and check that so we can see what that looks like. But before we exit this dialog, let's talk about the highlighting. Right now we're telling this tool to highlight both the fills and the strokes when editable. I'm not really concerned with editing strokes right now, so maybe I want to turn that one off. And I tell you what, let's go ahead and hit OK on this. Alright, so here we go with the Shape Builder tool. Now the first thing you'll probably notice is the three color swatches above the tool. Now let me just go ahead and show you our swatch panel here. We can use the arrow keys on our keyboard to cycle through the swatches in our swatch panel. And as I move through with these arrow keys, you can see how the little white outline around the swatches is moving around. And as is the little swatch preview that's over our cursor here. This is going to allow me to colorize artwork as I'm combining shapes with the selected swatch. So I tell you what, I'm not going to actually use that for this exercise. Let me just go ahead and disable that here. Just turning off that cursor swatch preview, and we'll hit OK. And I just want to show you really the way that this Shape Builder tool works. So we're going to need to select our artwork. So I'm going to come in here again and just hold Control, and I'm going to draw a marquee around a portion of this artwork here. So we've got sort of this front wheel and this axle selected, or this front bar here. And you can see here as I mouse over these shapes, Illustrator is giving me sort of a little grid of dots on top of the shape. This is going to be really helpful when it actually comes to combining these shapes. So I tell you what, let's just zoom in nice and close here, and let's start combining some of these shapes here. Now we've got here this star shape, and first thing I'm going to do is come in and combine this star shape in just like that. And all we have to do that is to click and drag, and you'll see Illustrator draws a little bitty guide here, and we'll highlight another shape that we're mousing over. So we're just going to go ahead and combine these shapes just like so. tell you maybe we want to go ahead and combine these two shapes. And I tell you what, let's go ahead and combine those shapes. You can see here how easy it is now to combine shapes and make more advanced shapes just using this shape builder tool. So I'm coming along here and combining each one of these shapes, sort of making the rim of this motorcycle. It's as simple as that. Let's go ahead and combine it into these little triangle shapes here and combine these all into one shape. Alright, so we've got all those combined here. And I tell you what, let's go ahead and we've got still the tips of this star out here kind of hovering over our tire shape. So I tell you what, I want to go ahead and combine those little tips with the tire shape itself just by dragging the shape builder tool over those two shapes together, and it's going to combine those. Just like so. Alright, so let me go ahead and just drag one more line path up here, just like so, and we're going to combine that star shape to this bar that comes down from the body of the bike here. And it looks like we've got one little point here left. Now, another cool feature of the shape builder tool is not only do we have the ability to combine shapes, but we have the ability to remove shapes as well. If we go ahead and hold down our Alt key, you'll see that the little cursor next to my mouse changes from a plus to a minus sign. So we can actually come in here now and go ahead and remove some of these shapes that are in between the spokes of this wheel just by clicking on them and holding down our Alt key. Pretty cool. Alright, so basically we have changed all those advanced shapes into really just a couple of shapes here. We've got that shape there, and we've got this shape here. Now let's go ahead and zoom out here, and then we'll come back to this back wheel of our motorcycle, or our scooter here. And I want to show you one other feature that the shape builder tool has. Now, we have a very similar setup with this wheel as we did with the front wheel. So I'm going to go ahead and just use my selection arrow, and let's just select all those components here. And let's switch back to our shape builder tool with a Shift M keyboard shortcut. And we could come in here and do the exact same thing, but one other keyboard modifier that we can use with the shape builder tool is actually the Shift key. By holding down the Shift key, Illustrator is actually going to allow us to draw a marquee selection with the shape builder tool, and it's going to combine all of the shapes that fall within that selection. Let me go ahead and just do that here now. We're going to just go and select everything on the interior of this wheel, and you can see here how everything gets combined into one shape. Let me just go ahead and undo that here. Alright. Now, just like with holding down the Shift key, we can also add the Alt key to the mix and hold down Alt and Shift at the same time, and that'll allow us to do a mass removal using the marquee selection, removing all of these shapes from our composition at once, just like so. So you can see here how the shape builder tool in Illustrator is really a powerful tool for using both the unite function and the minus front function within our Pathfinder. Hopefully this tool will really save you a lot of time in creating some really interesting and advanced shapes that normally you might have to go up to the Pathfinder panel to create in previous versions of Illustrator. So in this lesson we have learned about the new shape builder tool in Illustrator CS5. In the next lesson we're going to talk a little bit about new drawing modes in Illustrator CS5.